So this story is about the battle between Druss and Nogusha. This is another excerpt from the book written by David Gemmell called Legend. It's a great story. And it was, I believe, his first ever novel. So, let's go into the story zone. Below the walls, among the Nada, was a giant called Nogusha, Ulrich's champion for 10 years. He had been sent forward with the first wave, and with him as personal bodyguards were 20 Wolf's Head tribesmen. Their duty was to protect him until he could meet and kill Deathwalker. Strapped to his back was a 3-foot sword, the blade 6 inches wide. By his side were 2 daggers in twin sheaths, an inch over 6 feet. Nogusha was the tallest warrior in the Nada ranks and the most deadly, a veteran of 300 hand-to-hand contests. The horde reached the walls. Ropes swirled over the battlements, ladders rattled on the grey stone. Nogusha barked commands to the men around him, and 3 tribesmen climbed above him, the others swarming alongside. The bodies of the first 2 above him plummeted down to the rocks below, but the third created a space for Nogusha before being hacked to death. Gripping the battlements with one huge hand, Nogusha's sword flashed into the air, while on either side of him the bodyguards closed in. The massive sword cleaved the passage as the group formed a wedge driving towards Druss, some 20 paces distant. Although the Draenei closed in behind Nogusha's band, blocking the wall, none could approach the giant tribesman. Men died beneath his flashing broadsword. On either side of him, his bodyguards were faring less well. One by one they fell, until at last only Nogusha still stood. By now he was only paces away from Druss, who turned and saw him battling alone and soon to fall. Their eyes met, and understanding was there instantly. This was a man Druss could be hard put not to recognise. Nogusha, the swordsman. Ulrich's executioner. A man whose deeds were the fabric of fresh Nada legends. A living, younger counterpart to Druss himself. The old man leapt lightly from the ramparts to the grass beyond, where he waited. He made no move to halt the attack on the Nada warrior. Nogusha saw Druss waiting, slashed a path and dropped clear. Several Draenei warriors made to follow him, but Druss waved them back. "Well met, Nogusha," said the old man. "Well met, Deathwalker. You will not live to collect Ulrich's reward," said Druss. "There's no way back. All men must die, and this moment for me is as close to paradise as I could wish for. All my life you have been there before me, making my deeds seem shadows." Druss nodded solemnly. "I too have thought of you." Nogusha attacked with stunning speed. Druss hammered the sword aside, stepping in and struck a blow of awesome power with his left fist. Nogusha staggered, but recovered swiftly, blocking the downward sweep of Druss's axe. The battle that followed was brief and viciously fought. No matter how high the skill, a contest between an axeman and a swordsman could never last long. Nogusha feinted to the left, then swept his sword up under Druss's guard. With no time for thought, Druss hurled himself under the arcing blade, slamming his shoulder into Nogusha's midriff. As the tribesman was hurled backwards, the sword's blade sliced the back of Druss's jerkin, gashing the skin and flesh of his upper back. The old man ignored the sudden pain and threw himself across the body of the fallen swordsman. His left hand clamped over the right wrist of his opponent, and Nogusha did likewise. The struggle was now titanic, as each man strained to break the other's grip. Their strength was near identical, and while Druss had the advantage of being above the fallen warrior and thus in a position to use his weight to bear down, Nogusha was younger and Druss had been cut deep. Blood welled down his back, pooling above the thick leather belt around his jerkin. "You cannot hold against me," hissed Nogusha through clenched teeth. Druss, face purple with effort, did not answer. The man was right. He could feel his strength ebbing. Nogusha's right arm began to lift the sword blade, glinting in the morning sun. Druss's left arm was beginning to shake with effort and would give out at any moment. Suddenly, the old man lifted his head and rammed his forehead down onto Nogusha's helpless face. The man's nose splintered as the edge of his adversary's silver-rimmed helm crashed upon it. Thrice more, Druss butted the tribesman, and Nogusha began to panic. Already his nose and one cheekbone were smashed. He twisted, released Druss's arm, and exploded a mighty punch to his chin, but Druss rode it and hammered Snaga into the man's neck. Blood burst from the wound, and Nogusha ceased to struggle. His eyes met the old man's, but no word was said. Druss had no breath. Nogusha had no vocal cords. The tribesman transferred his gaze to the sky and died. Druss slowly pulled himself upright. Then, taking Nogusha by the feet, he dragged him up the short steps to the battlements. Meanwhile, the Nader had fallen back, ready for another charge. Druss called 2 men and ordered them to pass up Nogusha's body. Then he climbed onto the ramparts. "Hold on to my legs, but do not let yourselves be seen," Druss whispered to the soldiers behind him. In full view of the Nader, massed below, he pulled the body of Nogusha upright in a tight bear hug, took hold of his neck and groin, and with a mighty effort raised the huge body above his head. With a heave and a scream, he hurled the body out over the walls. But for the men holding him, he would have fallen. They helped him down, their faces anxious. "Get me to the hospital before I bleed to death," he whispered. So, that was a story about Druss and Nogusha, an excerpt from the book written by David Gemmell, the book called Legend. Don't forget that if you have a suggestion of a story, please feel free to submit it by emailing me. My email will be in the episode description, or you can go on to the Story Zone Facebook page and either message me or leave a comment on the page. That is us here on the Story Zone.